This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Guys, you know it's more refreshing and cooler than that ice-cold beer while you sit there and mow the lawn? Definitely not you if you're running around in this heat, in that office, wearing that stuffy, smelly, pit-stained dress shirt that's wrinkled to the high heavens. Don't worry now. Uncle Jock's got you covered, or should I say Larry Hunt's got you covered, with their moisture-wicking, anti-odor, breathable 4-way stretch 100% cotton dress shirt that will keep you cool like the other side of the pillow. Look, guys, I've been wearing mine for some time now, and I absolutely love them. They keep me cool, dry, fresh-looking all day long, so I can handle some business during the day and then head out and tear up the night while still looking fresh and clean. On top of it, this is probably the best part. The shirt is made, designed, and crafted by Detroiters in Detroit. See all the incredible styles Lawrence Hunt has to offer? Head over to lawrencehuntfashion.com. That's lawrencehuntfashion.com. And if you use promo code DSP, guess what? We'll save you 20% off your order. That's right, 20%. If you don't believe me, listen to Detroit Tigers catcher James McCann.
I'm a jeans and boots kind of guy, and taking my wife out to eat, I love putting on my Lawrence Hunt dress shirt. The way they stretch, the way they feel, they move with my body just like a t-shirt would. I know that I'm wearing a dress shirt, but it really doesn't feel like it.
That's lawrencehuntfashion.com.
Hey everybody, this is Freddie Cohen of ESPN Radio. When I'm not talking about breaking news or breaking news on ESPN Radio, I'm always a fan and listen to the Detroit Sports Podcast, and so should you.
Episode 163 about to kick off. Thank you, everybody, for downloading another episode of the Detroit Sports Podcast. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Joining me, my cousin, Adam the Jock Strozinski. What's up, cuz?
Boy, does Joey Styles ever look chubby. We got the WWE Network on in studio, and he looks like he found himself some Krispy Kremes for sure.
Man.
Whoa, boy, I used to be a huge fan of ECW back in the day. Joey Styles didn't look like that. Even when WWE bought ECW and they were putting Joey Styles on, he didn't look like that. Whew.
We got a lot to get to, cuz, on this very podcast. We're going to talk about the Lions. Obviously, some news made with Ameer Abdullah, some bad news, and maybe my fault because he was on my fantasy team. We'll talk about the Detroit Tigers. Maybe, just maybe, this could be one of the weeks where we say, okay, we could have an uptick in their performances. They're playing a series versus Minnesota. A little bit concerned regarding Wednesday starter Buck Farmer, but definitely that will draw my attention to see how he performs. But I want to start off the podcast with something that was funny to me, and I want to make sure that it's not just me that was thinking, hilariously. So last night I was editing a podcast, kind of hanging out with the kids, hanging out with the family, and all of a sudden James McCann comes up to bat. Tigers leading 3-0, and James McCann, has been a little bit up and down this year, but he steps to the plate and not only listen to the call, but listen to kind of the words that were used, and tell me this is not the funniest call you probably have ever heard.
I'm sure he goes up there, maybe rides the bike a little bit just to stay loose.
This is funny.
High, towering drive, left center field. That ball is hit well, and that ball is way back and gone.
Ooh, James, did you?
McCann put a charge into that one, and it went a long way. A 3-run shot for the Tigers.
Second deck.
Number 12.
So second deck is what? You're like, second deck.
So
it's the way he said it, right?
Exactly. So I'm sitting there at the computer.
You stop everything you're doing.
I'm like, wait a minute. Is that what he said for real? Is that what he said?
Shot for the Tigers.
Second deck.
Yep.
I was like, wait a minute. No, he did not just say that. I'm like, okay. So then they carry on and they talk about the moonshot that occurred. So I was up a little bit late. So by 1 o'clock, a very prominent podcast network also tweeted it out with that link and said, with the words, and said, bam. And I was like, okay, it wasn't just me. I was like, wait a minute. Come on. Don't get your head out of the gutter, Doc. But it was so funny, and it's just, you got to keep hearing it.
And it went a long way. A 3-run
moonshot
shot for the Tigers.
Second deck.
Second deck.
So, hence the importance, if you're a broadcast journalist or a sports broadcaster, you must enunciate because it's making the rounds. I might go viral. That thing is hilarious. It was funny, but in all good fun, they're right in the middle of a good series versus Minnesota, and we'll talk about them later in this very podcast. But
you know what the cool thing is about being from this area? There are certain things that we have an accent with when we speak, but we don't have to sit there and change the way we pronounce many words, or we have to adjust our vocabulary to sit there and fit in with broadcast standard. I mean, could you imagine being from the South and then getting a job, I don't know, somewhere in the North, and having to sit there and adjust the way you speak and say words because it doesn't match broadcast standard? That's the one cool thing about being from Michigan. I mean, we say things that are weird like pop, and the way we pronounce Michigan, it's Michigan. There's like a long E instead of an I sound. So there are things that we do different, but we have probably the closest to broadcast standard dialect of just about any place in the United States.
Oh, that's awesome. But yeah, all you had to say was, hey, upper deck, or he destroyed the baseball. But when it came out, it made me pause for a second.
It's dick.
Suck a dick. What a great shot by James McCann. Up 6-0. Oh, man. Cuz how concerned should we be now as Lions fans? What a awful performance versus Tennessee. Lots to sink our teeth into. I know that you and I both are probably feeling the same way about that pitiful football performance. You had to basically encourage me to stay with it because I was close to just being like, screw this. This is and a lot of people have said it's probably one of the worst and toughest game to watch of all time. It was so bad with the penalties, but right now, the news of the day, the big news is Ameer Abdullah placed on IR on Wednesday. Kind of there were rumblings when you heard that he had to go get a second opinion with a specialist, foot injury, and now you look at it and you go, man, we could have had the running back from Arizona. They took Ameer Abdullah, and another situation where you go, oh boy, it's time to be a little bit concerned because he had an okay rookie season, but now he's a guy that maybe you can't count on to be in the lineup day in and day out, and it's a big concern, I think. And like we always say, what's been the theme? What's been a constant theme throughout the course of this podcast? The Detroit Lions just cannot enjoy any success. They just, as a rule, if something great happens for the organization, whenever we get excited, whenever we get a chance to pump out our chest and say, yeah, look at the Lions, Ameer Abdullah, Theo Riddick. I think I tweeted out on our Twitter page, could this be one of the top two tandems, top 5 in the entire NFL? One game later, Ameer Abdullah's on the IR. Lots of question marks, and it just sucks. The Lions cannot enjoy success. It's just the way it is.
Every time we bring up the Arizona Cardinals running back, David Johnson, I'm going to sit there and puff out my chest and say, who wanted David Johnson in the 5th round? That's right. I did. I did not want Ameer Abdullah. I wanted David Johnson. He's a freight train. He's a beast. Anyways, moving on. You're absolutely right. This injury hurts this team dramatically because going into these games on Sundays, I felt pretty good about this run game. They were able to move the ball well. They were kind of a safety valve for Matt Stafford if plays broke down the field. Usually Theo Riddick or Ameer Abdullah was able to escape into the flat or sit there and catch a ball out of the backfield. They look elusive at times. They're able to break tackles and shake guys off. And the run game, this is probably the best run game that we've seen since, the last time we had a 1,000-yard rusher was Reggie Bush, and I think that was like 5 or 6 years ago. So this has been the best run game we've had since then, since maybe even Barry. And just the fact that they were able to move the ball down the field with the running backs, and the running backs were able to pick up large chunk plays and make plays out there. So yeah, this definitely hurts this team. The good thing that we can say is it looks as though they have some depth where the running back is concerned. Now, you've got Theo Riddick, who just signed an extension, and I like what he brings. Going into the season, I thought he should have been touted as the number 1 running back. You've got Washington, who looks pretty good. Zach Zenner's going to get some more play time here. There are guys out there that you can go and you can bring in. If you're looking to sit there and fill in for a guy like Ameer Abdullah, you can maybe bring in a CJ Spiller, see what he's got left in the tank. Ray Rice is out there. That name's been bantied about. I don't think they're going to bring Ray Rice in. I don't even know if I want Ray Rice at this point. He's had too many years off. I don't know what he can give you. Now, I know he's familiar with what Jim Caldwell does because that was his offensive coordinator over in Baltimore. That being said, I'm not sure if that's a guy who I want to bring in, especially at this point in his career. Not so much because of what he's done off the field. That plays a part in it, but it's more of what you're going to get. It looks like it's diminishing returns for what you're going to have to invest to get him here. So there are guys out there that you can bring in and you can try to see what you can get out of them. I'm not that concerned. I think there's more concern because after Sunday's game, the Lions are beat up. Their defense is depleted. You have nobody left in your linebacking core. If you're going to go out there and you're going to hit the waiver wire, and you're going to try to bring guys in to see what they can give you, you need to sit there and you need to add some depth at linebacker. Maybe look at something for your defensive line, because you just lost a playmaker with Ziggy Ansah, who's dealing with a high ankle sprain. Thankfully, it's a high ankle sprain, not a low ankle sprain. Those take roughly 4 to 6 weeks to sit there and heal and repair. High ankle sprain, usually a week or two, you're kind of out. It's no big deal. But you are beat up on the defensive side of the ball. As far as running back goes, yes, it's a major blow for this team because of what Ameer Abdullah was giving you, but I think there's more concerns on the defensive side of the ball than the offensive side of the ball.
Lots of concerns. You said it. But another concern that you have is you saw the offense regress a little bit. I didn't expect that a storyline that we would talk about would be drops from guys like Golden Tate, Marvin Jones, Anquan Boldin. I don't like to hear when a guy comes to town and he's known for being sure-handed, and then he comes to town and boom, he's starting to drop passes. The game on Sunday was just a tough watch. And now looking ahead with all the injuries, it's not something where you go, okay, it's not going to affect this team. This team was looked at to be 8-8 with everybody there. Now with everybody gone, you say to yourself, oh boy. And then the next game, of course, has to be divisional foe coming off of a loss. Green Bay is going to be looking to rebound after a terrible performance in Minnesota. You're going to Green Bay, where you only have now won 1 game since 91, and you're going to expect them to go to win 2 games back-to-back years. It looks to be a tough time right now for our Detroit Lions. And it's just super tough, and it sucks because, really, if they would have started 2-0, and you saw the crowd, you saw the passion, the energy, opening day, everybody was excited. They wanted to root and get behind the Detroit Lions and really say, okay, we're tired of all this losing. And then you go and you have an SOL performance. You just can't get rid of that moniker, because that, in and of itself, Game 2 versus Tennessee, that's what same old Lions is. Anytime you have a play that's successful, then you have a penalty. Or you have Eric Ebron earning phantom calls, a guy that's looking to take the next step, actually making some plays for the Lions. He makes an unbelievable move, and the defender goes, I don't know what the defender was trying to do. He went flying the other way, catches the ball. Oh, that's a pass interference. And you go, and we said it last year. I could just put on the rant that I had last year. The Lions didn't do nothing, didn't do enough to convince the league to stop screwing them. So not only do the Lions got to play Green Bay, they got to play the refs. And so with that, it's just too much of an uphill climb right now for me to have confidence this upcoming week that the Lions are going to have success. It just sucks. Ziggy Ansah, DeAndre Levy, which I'm sure we'll talk about, Ameer Abdullah, DeAndre Levy's backup gets hurt. You walked away from Game 2, and you might just look at that when you recap the 2016 season, and you go, look, the second game where we all expected a blowout, that game could have turned the season around from, strong potential to have success to something where we get back to 6-10, 7-9.
You're absolutely right. This game has the earmarkings of what the Green Bay game was last season, the Hail Mary game, where it was the one game that was kind of the tipping point where it could have possibly put you into the playoff hunt or knocked you out completely, and it totally knocked them out. Now, I know it's only Game 2, the season's still early, but in the NFL, every game counts. You kind of brought up a microcosm of something that I want to discuss. I want to know who or what is most to blame for this loss and why. Was it the players and the numerous penalties, 17 for, what was it? I believe it was 138. Yeah, 17 penalties for 138. Or was it the referees who threw 29 penalty flags and just absurd call after absurd call? Or was it the wide receivers and their butterfingers? Because you've got guys like Golden Tate, Marvin Jones, Anquan Boldin. You got these guys dropping balls left and right. And it's not just been this game against the Titans. Their first game was the same problem, and we discussed that on our last podcast. Going into this game last season, Golden Tate and I believe Marvin Jones had all of 7 drops combined. In the game against the Titans, they had 7 together. That's nuts. You have a whole season's worth of drops in one game. And then you've got the coaching staff, your boy Jimmy C, making questionable play calls, questionable timeout usage, not sitting there throwing challenge flags when plays should be challenged, looking like a complete buffoon. He honestly just glazed over eyes, looking like a fish out of water. Or is it the mounting injuries and the depth chart basically running on E? Because at a certain point, you ran out of linebackers for the game. You had no other linebackers you could suit up. You were basically looking at strong safeties like, hey, can you go in there and can you play Mike side linebacker? Or can you maybe be Will side linebacker? Can you just go out there and maybe make a tackle because we've got no linebackers left? Or, is it your boy Matt Stafford? Because down the stretch there, he played really inconsistent. That last drive, very inconsistent. And there were times in that game where, yeah, he looked like an absolute stud when he was bulldozing linebackers and then taking a shot and popping right back up. But there are other times where he's either not putting the ball in the right place, or he's not sitting there and reading the defense and calling out the right play, or there's some miscommunication between him and his wide receivers. So there's some issues there as well. Or do you see something else that maybe I missed?
No, you encapsulated it perfectly. I blame it on a combination of two things. I blame it on coaching, and I blame it on the players. You cannot take that many penalties. Yes, some of them were egregious, but they were egregious on both sides. The refereeing was of poor quality. The announcing was of poor quality. It was a terrible display of entertaining football. It was terrible. It was one thing where I said, okay, I don't think I can seriously watch a game where every 2 plays a flag is thrown. There's no momentum. Entertaining-wise, it was horrible for a customer. If I had paid $250 to sit in the 6th row and I watched that, I would be livid. My buddy Phil is a season ticket holder going on his 3rd or 4th year, and I texted him. I said, what was it like being in the stands? And he literally said, bro, that was the worst football game I have ever watched with my own 2 eyes. And so you go, okay, great. That really motivates your fan base to really want to pay high-priced dollars to continue to watch that. And so a lot of people walked away feeling mad. But for me, I said to myself, okay, the Lions, once the injuries happened, maybe they were deflated a little bit, but you cannot drop passes. The wide receivers have to help out Matthew Stafford. You cannot have plays that are taken back because you don't catch the football. You cannot have holding call after holding call. You cannot have momentum-killing drives and momentum-killing penalties, which happened, which we always see in games where they don't play well. The players did not put forth the best effort for them to win the game. Granted, though, with all that story combined, you still were 1 drive away from making it happen. And so you go, okay, Matthew Stafford has to take a little bit of blame, not all the blame, but a little bit of blame for that last throw. That last throw is unacceptable for an NFL quarterback to make at his level in his 8th year. You cannot be picked off like that, not seeing the defender. Yeah, you're a gunslinger, and yeah, you made that great throw early on where you were running and you zinged it to Anquan Boldin, but you got to remember, you were playing Indy and Tennessee. When you face tougher defenses, that pass is probably going to be an interception. So the players have to step up and take another step because next man up. Unfortunately, you don't get a chance to make excuses. If those guys go down, I expect maybe Dwayne Washington to take a bigger role, and I hope the Lions realize that it's probably in their best interest to maybe feature Dwayne Washington a little bit more instead of Theo Riddick. But we'll see. We've been calling for it. I want to see if Theo Riddick can be the every down back and be the number 1, RB1. I'm not exactly sure because Dwayne Washington looks to be the guy that's more prototypically going to fit into that slot based upon his runs and things like that. But with coaching, if your guys are not disciplined, there's only one person you blame, and that's the head football coach. But one play in particular that upset a lot of people, and you wondered, is why didn't he kick the 56-yard field goal? You had 4th down.
You got a guy who has kicked
indoors
the NFL long, I think it was 64-yarder with Matt Prater.
And so the overall scheme is passive. And so that's not what we want. We want aggression. And so you potentially left points on the board there by making that decision. Now, I understand you want to play field position, and maybe because Prater missed or he's seeing something that we don't know, but you're not going to line up there and try to kick I think that's probably at least at the far end of the range that he has. Maybe if it was 58, I could agree with it a little bit more, but 56 indoors, you would think you maybe want to push it or, go for it on 4th down instead of giving it away. But that's the coach's philosophy, and you said it yourself. The timeouts were, again, not used properly. The team just didn't look ready to play their A-prime ball, and you go, okay, you chalk up your stinker for the year, but you can't have any more. But we're poised to kind of have a stretch of games that are going to be tough here, starting with Green Bay, and everybody's got to step up. Every single person in that locker room has to step up because, unfortunately, I hope they don't believe, the press clippings or they kind of got full of their britches and thought they were better than they were. Anytime the Lions go on the field, you could see that performance. versus Tennessee. That's the worst part. This isn't versus Green Bay. This isn't versus an NFL elite team. You lost to Marcus Mariota. You let Marcus Mariota come back and lead a game-winning touchdown drive late in the game. Seriously? Andre Johnson has one catch, an NFL basically
He
wash
looks
up.
old and slow, bro.
One catch.
He looks like a giant tight end.
And he made it to win the game. And everybody was like, how did he make that catch? Only the Lions, man. Only the Lions. And it's just, I don't want to say they're cursed, but this is what an organization that has failed to develop quality depth and a quality organization looks like. You perform like that, you can perform badly, but that was on a whole other level. And they just can't do it the rest of the way. That was a key game. They needed that game. You might have to beat a Green Bay a couple times, and now you're looking at Minnesota, and they're no longer a cupcake. Remember what we said? Sam Bradford is a guy that if you give him time, can zing the ball all over the place, and they look good versus Green Bay. So an uphill climb, it's very devastating, but I'm hoping that this is just a one-and-done kind of situation, and they don't play. They look at that on film, and they get pissed off, and they correct it right away. They have the team to do it, but they have to perform week in, week out. Basically, what stinks, cuz they got to be full throttle, like 95% efficiency to be competitive in this league. If they play probably at 85 to 90% capability, they make some mistakes, they're not going to win.
Well, I see that last drive being a microcosm of the game and just kind of the way things went. I blame this loss on Matt Stafford. And I know that sounds a little bit hard, and it does look like he's making some strides going forward to being that quarterback that we all want, but I blame this on him. When you sit there and you look at that final drive, if I told you that your quarterback was going to go 2 for 5, get sacked once, and throw an interception with 1:13 left, what do you think the outcome's going to be? Probably going to think it's going to be a loss, because that's exactly what happened to this team. Matt Stafford sat there, took a sack on the very first play when they got the ball back, and he lost 9 yards. Next thing you know, you got to burn a timeout. Then Matt Stafford finds Eric Ebron. Great job by Eric Ebron to make a catch. I'm liking what I'm seeing out of Eric Ebron. It looks like there's some maturity there. It looks like he's finally developing into that player that we want him to be. I'm not ready to push all in on Eric Ebron yet, but I like what I'm seeing out of him. Eric Ebron makes a beautiful catch as he's running full stride, has to reach behind him, pin the ball to his hip, and then gets upfield. He ends up picking up, I don't know, something like 20-some yards, 30-some yards, and moves the ball down the field. 29 yards he ends up picking up. I'm sorry. Next thing you know, Matt Stafford, incomplete to Golden Tate. Matt Stafford, awful pass to Theo Riddick. Absolutely atrocious. You end up, Theo Riddick gets kept in bounds, so now you got to burn another timeout. It's just another bad play call and a bad pass. If anything, just throw it out of bounds. Start over. It's no big deal. And then you've got the awful interception where he was trying to target Eric Ebron. Never seen Parrish Cox. It just blew up in your face. Absolutely atrocious. And this team, for some reason, they do this every single game where they sit there, jump out to a lead. I mean, the Lions were rocking and rolling. They were winning, 15 to 3. Next thing you know, fourth quarter comes around, they take their foot off the gas, and what happens? The Titans get right back into it. And this team just doesn't have the consistency and doesn't keep their foot on the pedal going forward all the time. It's like they have these lapses where I don't know if it's just the coaching, if it's the players, if the play calling gets conservative and the butts start to pucker a little bit and sit there and everything gets a little bit tight. I'm not sure what it is. This team, you can tell, is not built for success because they don't know how to play with it, and that's an issue.
Do you see them going forward and having at least a little bit of consistency with the guys that are their backups? You look at, who's going to replace Ziggy Ansah. You look at the linebacking core is the biggest issue. But you look at potentially if you can get some production from the defensive end that's going to replace Ziggy Ansah. Do you think that the next man up theory is going to work if they get into the game and have some practice time? Do you think that Bob Quinn, in terms of who he's brought in and, hearing reports that they're working out people left and right, that they're doing a little bit more than in the past, that maybe they will, at least with some practice time, maybe not match the production of Ziggy Ansah, but at least do the job, because you got this guy Hyder that's kind of come out of nowhere and been a productive force. Nobody really projected that he was going to come out and do some things, and he's been a guy that you go, okay, this is somebody that's come from obscurity and made the team basically off of his 4th preseason game performance. You go, okay, let's see if the next man up theory can work. But collectively, I just think that they have to play much better, and they have to, I don't know, do you think that the same old lines, as much as they try to say we don't believe in it, maybe creeps into their spirit and goes, the league's against us. Every time we have success, I mean, we talk about it, but if you're a player on that team, I would think, and I would walk into a room after a game like that and go, man, what the hell is going on with this organization? Why do we get referees that treat us this way year in and year out? Why do we get treated this way? And why do we have situations where Marcus Mariota makes an unbelievable throw and Andre Johnson catches it and it's not swatted down? Why can't more breaks go the Lions' way more consistently? And so maybe you look at it and you say, there's not enough of a leader that can overcome that, where when the performance dips or when a stupid referee makes a play or a call that hurts your team, doesn't pick up the guys and go, you know what, we're going to overcome all this nonsense and we're going to step up. You can talk the talk, but who in that room, if they stood up and preached and said, let's get this shit done, would you rally behind and go, yeah, that's the guy? Was it Levy? Was it Ansah at this point in time? Is it Stafford? I don't think that the leadership on this team, if you look at it, is as high a quality as I think you need. You need a Ray Lewis. You need a guy that's going to take everybody and lift everybody up over the hills when there's challenges. I think when the hills are presented, I think they try their best to get over it, but they come crashing back down. That's just the way it is.
With what you're describing, that all falls on the head coach. The head coach has to come in and has to rally these guys.
Oh, man.
If they feel like something is slipping away, the head coach has to pull a guy off to the side and say, hey, let's get back in this. Let's stay focused. Let's keep our mind on what's at hand here. And if you look at that game, there were bad calls on both sides of the ball. There was a point there where it looked like Matt Stafford fumbled, and the Lions got the ball right back. Tennessee couldn't challenge, and they didn't go to replay on it. So there were calls on both sides. You're right. The Lions had a touchdown taken away. Sure, that maybe feels like it's going against you, especially when it was a phantom push-off. But at the same point, you had 2 more cracks at the end zone, and you got called for penalties both times. So you have to look at yourself and what you're doing. Look, I believe they're going to go into Green Bay, and I think they're going to get housed. Green Bay's going to look real healthy this week, and the Lions are going to look real bad. This was one of those games that you penciled in an L for, and you needed to get this game against Tennessee. You sat there, you got the win against Indy, and you're like, all right, cool, riding high, feeling good. Pencil in a win for Tennessee. You knew they were going to come out flat because everybody was talking like, oh, man, they're going to sit there and they're going to smoke Tennessee. End up coming out flat, end up losing to Tennessee, and now you're going to get housed in jail sex by Green Bay. So good luck with that. This team might start to look healthy when they go and they play Chicago at Chicago, but that's just because Chicago is atrocious right now. Jay Cutler doesn't have a thumb on his hand. That offensive line is porous. Their defense isn't very good. But until then, you're going to get sacrificed by Green Bay. That's what's going to happen. Do I think that they can sit there and plug guys in next man up style? I don't think they have enough guys right now. That linebacking core is so depleted right now. If DeAndre Levy doesn't come back, if Kyle Van Noy's not playing, if those 2 guys right there are hurt, your depth chart now looks incredibly small. And now you go along the defensive line, which is the absolute strength of this team. They sit there and they put pressure on the quarterback, which makes the safeties and the secondary look better. You're going to lose a guy who is a game changer like Ziggy Ansah. I don't know if anybody can match Ziggy Ansah's production that's on this team right now. Again, remember last year, Ziggy Ansah was the guy who was challenging probably the best defensive player in the league in J.J. Watt for sacks. That's how often he got to the quarterback and how much he disrupted things. Yeah, they've got some nice pieces, guys that are doing some things, but why do you think guys are doing things? Who do you think's taking a double team right now? Who do you think they're favoring? What side of the ball on the defensive end do you think they're favoring? They're sitting there, they're stacking guys up so Ziggy Ansah can't get to their quarterback. Take Ziggy Ansah away. Now what do you got? You got Haloti Ngata? You think he's going to get there? He's a run stuffer. He's not there to make sacks on quarterbacks. So I don't think that they're going to be able to sit there and next man up this because I think they've lost too much high-quality talent and talent that was basically designed and schemed for them to be successful. So you're going to go to Green Bay, you're going to get popped. It's just what's going to happen. Expect it. And if they don't, hey, something miraculous happened. But I'm expecting them to go into Green Bay, and they're just going to get dominated up and down the field. Aaron Rodgers is pissed about last week. You got the unfortunate job of going to Green Bay, their season opener, and they're coming off a loss to Minnesota. Good luck with that. Because you could be 2-1 right now after that game, and everything would be okay. Wouldn't be that big of a deal. The sky wouldn't be falling. It's going to be 1-2. The sky is going to be falling. Jim Caldwell will be on the hot seat because I'm sure he's going to give us something to talk about after the game in Lambeau because that's what he does because he's a boob. It's going to be right back to square one with Matt Stafford. He's regressing. He's not doing what he's supposed to be doing. He looks good at the first game, but this third game, and after that second game, it's going to be all regression. That's what we're going to be talking about. That's what I see when I look at my crystal ball.
When I look in the crystal ball, I see a chance for the Lions to play well if they can control the offensive line, if they can maybe get some production from Dwayne Washington, Theo Riddick combined, and then you maybe have a guy in the secondary to maybe do the job in Quinn and Darius Slay. If you can get a couple interceptions, because if you have a gunslinger in Aaron Rodgers, he's going to want to put on a performance in front of the home fans, and they seem to be a team that likes to, establish the run through the pass. And so if you get a couple turnovers, maybe, just maybe, you dial back and try your absolute best to knock Aaron Rodgers out of the game. I think the strategy should be to force as many turnovers as possible and for the offense to be on the field as much as possible, because the offense, whether you agree it's too conservative or whether you argue that they're not good enough, I think the offense, if everybody steps up, if the wide receivers can help Matthew Stafford out, if Dwayne Washington can take that next step and Theo Riddick maybe, proves a lot of people wrong and can get through some holes and maybe be a little bit elusive, this will be a good test on the road versus a defense that's going to pin their ears back and become ready to go. So I'm very curious to see how Theo Riddick is going to perform. And if one of those guys, maybe in the secondary, maybe one of the running backs, and if Matthew Stafford cannot throw an interception, then you have a chance to be in the game. And so I'm going to say it's going to be a very close game within 3 to 7 points, but the Lions in the end are not just going to have enough, and they're probably going to have the ball, but probably have a fourth down play, and it won't be executed. So I'm thinking along the lines that it's going to be a competitive game, not as disastrous as what we saw in Game 2, but I see a game along the lines of like 31 Green Bay, 27 Lions.
If you look at what Minnesota did to Green Bay to sit there and really disrupt them in order to get that victory when they opened up their brand new field in Minnesota, your defense has to get to Aaron Rodgers. You have to send guys and you have to bust Aaron Rodgers in the mouth. Your guys deep down the field have to be able to cover wide receivers like Jordy Nelson, Randall Cobb, Devontae Adams. They've got to be able to cover those guys, and you got to be able to contain Eddie Lacy. This game falls on the defense. If there is any hope for this team to win this game, that depleted defensive line, that depleted linebacking crew is going to have to sit there and contain Eddie Lacy, James Starks, and they're all going to have to put pressure on Aaron Rodgers. That is the only way you can get this win. If you don't do that, and that's why I don't see this being a close game. This is why I see Green Bay sitting there and just running a train on the Lions, because Aaron Rodgers is pissed off. He's holding every single one of those offensive linemen feet to the fire because he got popped in the mouth way too many times last week on Sunday Night Football. He's going to come out and he's going to be ready to set the world on fire. And you know what? He's starting with your Detroit Lions. And I don't think the Lions have enough up front and in their linebacking core to sit there and make up for the pieces that they lost due to injury.
All right, let's take a quick timeout. So you're predicting a huge loss. I'm predicting a much smaller loss, but in the end, I think we both know that it's going to be super tough to go into Green Bay and win. But let's regroup, come back, and talk about a little bit more positive things with the University of Michigan, Michigan State, and their great win versus Notre Dame, and maybe a little bit more hope for the Detroit Tigers, maybe not based upon their play, but the teams that are ahead of them in the wild card are facing off against some tougher competition. So we might just eke our way in, and we'll talk about potentially how would you feel if the Tigers got into the wild card, but maybe not earning it. Stay with us, Doc and Jock, episode 163 on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. I want to tell you about our newest sponsor, Team Top Cat Sales. Are you looking for team apparel for your high school, your club sports team, or corporation? Look no further than Top Cat Sales, located on the east side of Main Street in downtown Royal Oak, between 11 and 12 Mile. Through founder and former University of Michigan QB John Wangler's leadership, Top Cat Sales has developed a tradition of selling and distributing custom Adidas team apparel with the highest quality and best service. Get your organization, school, or club team all in with Adidas today by going to TopCatTeamSales.com. That's TopCatTeamSales.com. Also, follow Top Cat on Twitter at Team Top Cat. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for everybody that's been supporting the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Thank you to the ARIA Creative Group. Go visit ariacreativegroup.com for creating our new logo and our banner. They do great work, and if you're interested in designing a website or interested in designing a logo for your company or product, check out ariacreativegroup.com. Yes, sir, cuz let me tell you, if there was a fan that was nervous that Michigan State was going to blow the lead versus Notre Dame, it was me. It was a Doc. I was sitting there, and my jaw at the time on Saturday evening hit the floor. I was like, what am I seeing here? Michigan State finally said, okay, you want to play ball? We're going to smash you in the mouth, and we're going to run the hell out of the football. That 76-yard run, that 76-yard touchdown was awesome. Donnie Corley emerged on the national scene with that catch, ripping the ball away, and Michigan State Spartans had a great lead. And then they went all Detroit Lions, they went all Michigan State, and they changed their defensive philosophy. They went soft defensively. They played off, and all they did was basically allow Notre Dame to come and march right back into the game, almost to the point where you couldn't contain it. All the Michigan State Spartans had to do was come up with one field goal drive at the end to put things away. They made it much more competitive than it needed to be, but in the end, you walk away from an appearance in South Bend with a victory, and it was just a great performance all around. Looking back after the fact, hey, if knowing that Michigan State was going to win the game, that was one way to do it, man. That kept you engaged throughout the whole game, and you were like, oh boy, are the old demons going to pop up? They didn't. Michigan State won the game, and it opens up a whole bunch of possible scenarios for Michigan State going into the rest of the season and having a victory versus a top 25 opponent. A great performance.
You know, what I had trouble with the Michigan State victory is, much like you said, it seems like they got their lead, and then all of a sudden, their game plan changed. Like you said, they went all Lions on you. I don't understand why Michigan State just can't keep their foot on the gas and just knock the opponent out. Instead, they sit there, trick around a little bit in the third quarter, trick around a lot more in the fourth quarter. Next thing you know, it's a really close game. Thankfully, they were able to sit there and come out with a win. They got the victory there. Doesn't hurt them at all. They look like a solid team going forward. I was really impressed with the defensive line for Michigan State. I was impressed, like you said, Donnie Corley Jr. looked like a stud with that reception in the back of the end zone. Impressed with Tyler O'Connor. It looks like he really matured. This is what I was talking about when I said that they showed absolutely nothing against Furman. They showed nothing but vanilla. They sat there. They brought the house against Notre Dame. They did what I thought they were going to do. They were going to sit there and kind of trick around a little bit, show you a lot of different looks, unleash some guys. Again, Donnie Corley Jr. looked like a stud. Tyler O'Connor looked like a stud. LJ Scott looked like an absolute beast. Defensive line, especially Malik McDowell, dominant. Absolutely dominant. And it looks like Michigan State has now set themselves up to make a nice run in the Big Ten. I think the only thing standing in their way right now is probably Ohio State. That game against Michigan, that's going to be a very close game. It's going to be a knockdown, drag-out fight, I think. But they have set themselves up where they've got to look ahead, take it one game at a time. I think you dispose of Wisconsin this week, and you just kind of keep that train moving. You sit there and you build and you build and you build to that Michigan game. And then after that, you build to that Ohio State game. Because right now, Michigan and Michigan State fans, you got to be nervous about what's going on down in Buckeye country. Because Ohio State looks like they're the real deal. They don't sit there and they don't retool. They just reload. Just pop new guys in. Most of these guys are young cats, so they're going to be there for the next year or two. So you're going to have to deal with them for quite some time. And that, I think, is a little bit of a concern that both Michigan and Michigan State fans have to look at.
So how impressed were you with Michigan State's performance? You've seen potentially what a national championship winning team looks like. Can they execute that versus Alabama? Probably not to that degree. But you see,
Notre Dame is a national championship caliber team?
No. I'm saying, do you see, like, okay, Michigan State was able to, run the ball effectively. They were able to make key throws when needed. Can they execute that kind of game plan versus an Alabama, versus an Ohio State? Versus Ohio State, I think you can do some things and open up some holes. But versus Alabama, I don't think you're going to be able to line up and, as you've seen in the past, try to smash mouth it down their throat. Versus Alabama, you're going to have to say, okay, quarterback, go out there, do your thing. versus Notre Dame, you were able to say, okay, we're going to run the ball down your throat, and they wore them down. They physically, you saw it in the game throughout the course of 4 quarters. Notre Dame looked like, what the hell are we trying to do play after play? And Michigan State could get 3 to 4 yards every single play that was executed. And so what I'm saying is, how impressed were you that Michigan State went out there versus Notre Dame and did that? And can they maybe potentially mix and match with the national elite like an Ohio State and an Alabama? I'm trying to project versus tougher competition.
I think against an Ohio State, they can match up. Alabama's a totally different horse. And trying to sit there and decipher this from the Notre Dame game is a little bit difficult because you're dealing with a coach here in Brian Kelly who falls way short of the mark. Everybody talks about him like he's some type of offensive genius. He's a great football coach. Nick Saban's on a whole other playing level. He's on a whole other plane. So to sit there and try to compare the head coaches at these two programs and try to decipher anything from it, it just isn't going to add up properly for you. You're right. I think they can match up well against an Ohio State. I think they can match up well against maybe a Louisville. I mean, they've got things going right now. They're rocking and rolling. I have no doubt in my mind Michigan State could take apart a Florida State Seminole team that just got popped this past weekend. I think they could match up against the Houston. I think they could match up well against the Michigan. And these are all teams that are basically in the top 5, top 6, top 7 of the college football AP polls here. I think they could match up against a Clemson. Clemson looks like it maybe has figured things out just a little bit. It looked like for the first 2 games of the season, they were kind of working through some different things. It looks like they finally have put it together, and Deshaun Watson looks like the absolute stud that he was projected to be this year. So I think Michigan State can compete with the elites. I don't know if they can give a team like an Alabama a run for their money. I just don't know if they've got the talent yet. You got to remember, Alabama recruits from a totally different pool than everybody else in college football. Columbus is probably the only other place where they can sit there and they can tap into those wells that Alabama reaches into. So it's a little bit difficult. So it's an uphill battle for real.
So the rankings come out, and again, you got Michigan and Michigan State in the top 10. And a lot of people are looking at, well, why is Michigan State ranked below Michigan when Michigan's played unranked teams and they haven't really had really great performances? They're doing the job. They're winning. Granted, you don't have your best defender in Jordan Lewis. You're still testing out a young quarterback who's kind of going through now the struggles of being, the head guy there at Michigan. But do you think that these, coaches and the individuals that are voting in the polls have it right where you have Michigan consistently ahead of Michigan State? I just need Michigan to keep winning and show up ranked number 1 or number 2 coming into East Lansing, because if Michigan State can defeat Michigan, which is, looking harder and harder with each passing week as, Michigan gets better, and hopefully Michigan will have their best team because it'll make for a much better game. But do you think that Michigan deserves to be ranked higher than Michigan State?
I think if you look at the quality of opponent, now this is basically based off of one opponent. Michigan's only really played one person. Otherwise, they played, an FCS school here. So, I mean, you're basically basing what Michigan State has done off of the Notre Dame game. And yes, they beat the more highly ranked opponent, the opponent who came in with a lot of gusto this season. That opponent got popped by Texas. That opponent got ran off the field, except in the 4th quarter, by Michigan State. Could you make a case that Michigan State should be ranked ahead of Michigan? Absolutely you can. Do I believe they should? I'd like to see a little bit more before we sit there and we start crowning them. But I could agree with you if you wanted to say, yeah, they should be ranked ahead. How much further ahead? Not very. If you want to say Michigan maybe deserves to be ranked 6th, Michigan State 5th, sure, go ahead. Whatever you want to do. The only reason Michigan right now is ranked ahead of Michigan State is just because of the preseason polls that came out. Michigan was ranked, 6th or 7th. Michigan State was ranked 8th. So, you have these preseason polls that come out, and the teams just kind of sit there and they fight their way. Actually, no, Michigan was ranked 8th, and Michigan State, I believe, was ranked 12th. So, they sit there and they fight their way up after winning a couple games. I thought it was really weird the way Michigan State's schedule worked. You play your FCS opponent, who is whatever. You don't show anything. You don't look very good in that game. You don't move, which is great. You stay kind of where you're at, and then you have a week off. Everybody else gets to play. You take a week off, and then you come back, and then you pop Notre Dame, who was ranked 18th. So, yeah, you can make an argument. Do I believe that they should be? I I don't know if the polls actually have it right or not. I'd like to see them do away with the polls, maybe play 4 or 5 weeks. Once you get into either Big Ten or SEC competition where you're playing them week in, week out, so you get a better judge of what you're looking at, that's when I'd like to see these polls come out, and that's when I'd like to kind of see what you're working with. Look, Michigan has done some good things. They've played absolutely nobody. Hawaii's not a very good team. Colorado, they're okay. No big deal. They're okay. They sat there, they gave you a little bit of run for your money last week after that game. It just, you haven't seen enough. I think you'll tell a little bit more when you play Penn State here. I expect Michigan State to pop Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin's going to come into Michigan, and I think Michigan's going to beat Wisconsin, but I think you'll know a little bit more after Wisconsin takes its second loss.
Now we're going to talk and turn our attention to the University of Michigan here, but last week we started talking about the fans and kind of how they're treating Jim Harbaugh, the media coverage, and it looks like this week a little bit more. There has been more and more steady attention given to the fans of Michigan. Did you get a chance to peek into Paul Finebaum and what he said?
Yeah, I heard about it.
Okay, so for
I wish that guy would just shut up.
I knew you're not a big fan of his.
He's like such an SEC slap. It's ridiculous. Like, he can't take off his Alabama tinted glasses to sit there and take a look at anything. So anything that comes out of Paul Finebaum's mouth, just decrepit. Like, honestly, the dude looks like a goddamn crypt keeper. Like, honestly, Tales from the Crypt called. They want you back. Go away.
So for those that are listening that don't know what we're talking about, a caller called in when Finebaum was talking about college football, and the caller kind of had said that Michigan and the comparisons between Harbaugh and Nick Saban aren't the same because Harbaugh started with less, so that means that Harbaugh deserves a little bit more respect. Finebaum went on to talk about, Michigan, is the hardest team right now to judge because they really haven't played anybody, and there's more to kind of judge with Michigan and Michigan State. So he gets upset at the caller, and he says, and he airs out, and I quote, "Is there a more pathetic fan base in America than the University of Michigan? What a whiny and sniveling bunch." And I could tell that you're upset and highly frustrated with that. But my point of contention is we've already known that Michigan has this air of arrogance around them, but they've earned it on some level. Now, can they still walk around with their chest held high and talk about Michigan being national title contenders and Final Four quality? No, because now Michigan State fans are like, sure, Michigan, you keep on chirping, go ahead, do your thing, because now we have much more solid footing to stand on, being that we got to the college football playoff first, and the fact that we've won the last 7 of 8 games, and we won the last game in the most dramatic, unbelievable, high-quality value of all time. But I don't think
Michigan fans are even talking about a national championship yet, or realistically,
not all of them,
that they're going to sit there and be in contention to win it. I think right now, what Michigan fans are excited about is the fact that now you can mention our name for the Big Ten championship. And again, you got to take care of business.
Can you really?
You got to beat MSU, which I think they're going to beat MSU. And you've got to sit there and you got to beat Ohio State, which is going to be an absolute bloodbath. And I wouldn't be surprised if Ohio State ran a train on them again. So I think Michigan fans are just excited that, we're not sisters of the poor like we were the last 8 years. Paul Finebaum just needs to shut up. And I see what you're doing, and I know where you're going, because this is what you do. You're a little snide, you're a little cocky, you're this, that, and the other thing. I see what you're doing. Just stop. Don't get me pissed off. Let's not do this.
Oh, come on. We had a nice win versus Notre Dame when I thought they would lose. They played great.
Absolutely a great win. Who told you they were going to win?
You did.
Who did?
It was great.
That's right. I did.
It's because
I sat there. I told my dad. I said, hey, because he called me, because my dad's a total degenerate, if you don't know. That guy gambles on everything. He would gamble on 2 fleas sitting there fighting if he could. Honestly, though, I sat there and I said, hey, look, I think the line was 7 on Saturday afternoon. I said, I think the line's 7. Take Michigan State. They're going to win outright. Absolutely, they're going to win outright. Thing that I didn't expect is for Michigan to sit there and not cover. The Michigan line was 18. They ended up winning by 17. It's amazing how close Vegas is to always being right. Blows my mind. Absolutely blows my mind. And I sat there, I told them to take Michigan. I figured that they would win by 20. Yeah, I was wrong there. But I was dead nuts on about that Michigan State game. So Whatever,
stuff.
1 for 1.
So Michigan played 3 quarters. That's all they needed, really, to play versus Colorado. They took that first quarter off. Everyone was like, what's going on here? The defense looked atrocious. Colorado got out to an early lead, but Michigan regrouped. They came back, ran the football well. Wilton Speight came out and finally figured out how to throw the football. A lot of people were a little bit nervous that he might have been dinged up, that he didn't look really of high quality. Should maybe Jim Harbaugh sit him down after the first half? But everyone kind of, once they settled into the game, people were like, okay, let's just be patient. Michigan's probably going to do their thing. And if Colorado probably could have made one adjustment, they probably should have just wished they got a better punter, because Colorado made punting look like something that you had to must see. It was horrible.
When I was watching the game, I was basically in the process of sending you a tweet that said, defense is crap, offense is garbage. Thank God for special teams, because Michigan's special teams is the only thing that kept them in that game early on. That was it. And you're right. Thank God Colorado has no idea how to get a effective punt off as you're kicking it into the back of your own players and you're just letting guys run right through. It just, thank God. Thank God. I don't really know what we've learned about Michigan to this point. We're 3 games into the season. I have really no idea. What I can tell you that I do like and what I took away from that game, the one thing I can tell you is that I like the fact that Jim Harbaugh isn't going to get frustrated, isn't going to get put on edge, and isn't going to deviate from his plan. He knows what he wants to do. He knows how he's going to attack a game and how he's going to attack an opponent, and he sticks to it. Even if, through the first quarter, things are going all sorts of sideways, and the only reason that you're down by 14 is because you've got an effective special team unit. So I like to see that. That is something that Mark D'Antonio does as well, where things will be going all sorts of haywire, but he's like, all right, just calm down, guys. It's going to be okay. We'll get it figured out, and we'll just keep going. You keep pounding the rock. Isn't that what it is? Or you keep sitting there, you just keep tapping the head of the nail until it goes in. And that's basically what you got with Jim Harbaugh, and that's something that I was able to take away from that game. Otherwise, I've got no clue about this team. It's really hard to tell because they've played absolutely nobody to this point. And it's not necessarily a knock on their schedule or anything like that. It's just, I don't know what we got. I really don't. Looks like we've got a quarterback who can make some plays downfield. I know that our wide receivers are speedy and fast. I know that we've got probably the best tight end in the league. I have no idea what our run game is. No clue. None. Jabril Peppers, all over the place. All over the place. He's an effective linebacker playing in this system. He's effective. He can sit there. He makes hits, makes plays on the ball. I think sometimes he runs himself out of plays and he doesn't always take a great angle, but he makes plays. He's a playmaker, and that's what you need on this team. Otherwise, I don't know. I don't know what they are. I don't know what this defensive line is. I'm not really sure what this secondary is. We haven't seen Jordan Lewis in 3 games. So what do you got going on there? Taco Charlton looks like he's going to be back this week for Penn State, but I don't know. You know what I'm saying? So there are question marks everywhere. I think this linebacking core, much like your Detroit Lions, is weak. It's very suspect. That's part of the reason why you've got a guy like Jabril Peppers playing up in your linebacking core. So just a lot of things that lead to question marks. I have more question marks than I have answers, and I don't necessarily like that going into Big Ten play.
Yeah, room for improvement is what you could say, is that Michigan, and I do believe that some of the issues that you talked about will be corrected and will be looked at, and I don't believe there'll be another game where Michigan doesn't look like they're prepared to start the game. And that's what happens when you have...
They absolutely came out flat that game.
Exactly. And so maybe, the era of Tom Brady's coaching skills and whatever he said to them, it just might have took a longer lasting impact. By all accounts that he went in there and made a really awesome speech, and it was really amazing and things like that. But dude, for Tom Brady, didn't even want to stay for the whole game. He was like, okay, stay for a quarter and a half, and they had a Michigan staffer take him to his private jet and get him back to where he had to. My God, Mr. Brady, you're not good enough to stick through the entire 4 quarters of the game. But hell, if you have a wife like that in a palatial estate, I can understand why you just want to make your appearance, shake the babies, kiss everybody, get all your love, and get out of there by 1:30. Be back in the crib by 5, getting your steak and having your fun on that weekend. But it was all good for the college football teams, definitely in the state of Michigan. And my goodness, a story that everyone should really pay attention to is what the hell's going on out there, I believe, in Western Michigan. They've taken a boatload of money and gotten the victories. They're a program where a lot of the a lot of the programs that are not of highest stature, like a Michigan or Michigan State, they get money to show up and basically, in essence, take an ass whooping. So, a team like Western Michigan, a team like Eastern, they get basically handed $1 million or so or things like that. But Western's not playing the game. Western's like, you know what? We'll take the cash and get the victories. And the post-game videos are awesome. Coach Fleck, I believe, is just doing his thing, making the media rounds, and they're doing some things. So credit from the DSP for sure for what the hell's going on over there at Western. You paying attention at all? You catching the buzz from Coach, is it PJ Fleck?
It's PJ Fleck. And yeah, I keep tabs on what's going on. I'm real interested for that Western Central game. I think that's going to be good. Eastern's absolutely garbage, so I really pay no attention to them. Dude, Central's got a bit of a squad too, so I think it's going to be interesting as far as the MAC goes. What's disappointing is it's MAC football, right? So they don't have any real shot to play with the big boys because they're looked down upon as a conference. But the MAC has some really good players and some really good talent, and they've got some really good coaches. So it's going to be interesting. And yeah, I do keep tabs on it. Probably not as closely as Michigan or Michigan State, but I'm interested to see that Central Western game. I think that's going to be good.
And with that being said, for Michigan State, you cannot have any hangover. And I don't believe Mark D'Antonio will allow that to happen. Big game versus Wisconsin. It's going to be tight, hard hitting, but I do believe Michigan State will come away with the victory. And it's looking and it's shaping up to be an epic battle October 29th, creeping ever so close for probably one of the biggest showdowns in college football history between an undefeated Michigan team and an undefeated Michigan State team. That will be something else to see because, you could have the turning of the tide back in Michigan's favor, or you could be having a cementing of a legacy for Mark D'Antonio to defeat Jim Harbaugh in his first couple attempts, and that would be awesome. No doubt about it. Good stuff in college football. I'm looking forward to the weekend's games, and it's been exciting. Again, everyone talks about it. Games are too long, man. I can't last 4 hours, and especially watching my Spartans. 4 hours. They have to do something, maybe just to scale it back to about 3.5. The average game is going way too long, and it's just, timeout after timeout. Every first down, they stop the clock. They got to find ways to kind of rein it in and get it to kind of the level of the NFL where 1 o'clock game is going to end around 4:05, 4:10 at the latest.
What the hell do you have going on a Saturday?
It went from 7:30 to 11:30, dude. That's a long time.
You're running around with the kids. You're sitting there feeding them. You can't let the one kid see the Mr. Roof commercials because,
right.
She either loves Mr. Roof or freaks out about Mr. Roof. So,
yeah.
What do you got going on?
There's Netflix series that I could check out. There's movies.
Oh, speaking of that, I'm glad you brought that up. By the way, I think Michigan's just going to roll over Penn State. They're absolutely garbage. Don't worry about that. Anyways, Netflix. This is great. I'm glad you brought this up. This segues in. I don't know if we talked about this yet on the show or not, but have you seen Last Chance U?
I saw the very first episode and I was hooked, but I don't have time yet to binge watch it, but that's on the list of things to watch.
I blew through that in 2 days.
It was good?
2 days. I watched the first episode while I was making dinner for me and the wife, and then next thing you know, I sat down and watched, I think it's like 8 episodes. I watched 7 episodes back to back to back to back to back to back to back, all the way up until it was like 3:30 in the morning. Yeah, it's great. Check it out. It's incredible. You'll see what the hell happens in SEC country. You will see. You will see how these kids who are hardly literate, but can play football, you will see how they get pushed through their classes. And watch this show, and don't tell me that the one white broad who's sitting there trying to help all these kids get through their classes and making sure they're all right, don't tell me that she's not getting plugged by any of these dudes because it just has sexual tension written all over it. She's a single mom, and she's sitting there, I got to help all these kids not making an impact on all their lives. And, oh, yeah, there's an impact going on. It's in your pants.
Is that the
by all these kids.
Everybody's
running
talked about
choo-choos.
it. Everybody's talked about it, has said that it's a really good...
it's great, though. It's a great series.
All right.
Absolutely great. And they have everything at their fingertips, and it just all goes up in smoke. It's great series. Check it out. Incredible.
8 hours? 10 hours? How many episodes?
I think it's 8 episodes.
Okay.
Each one's about 55 minutes, so just shy of, 8 hours, so probably closer to 7.5.
All right, put down the phone, put down the Snapchat, and I will watch it probably in the next couple weeks.
Great.
Last Chance U, for those of you that haven't checked it out on Netflix. All right, we're going to talk about the Tigers right after this break. Stay with us. Doc and Jock, episode 163 on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Doc and Jock here for Fanatic U. If you're looking for some sweet sports swag and you love your Detroit teams, and I mean you really love your Detroit teams, you got to check out fanaticu.com. and get the coolest gear out there and rock your Red Wing shirt, rock your Lions shirt, rock your Piston apparel. Wear it till the wheels fall off. Michigan State, you know what? They got it too. Check out Fanatic U. They have 6 locations all over Metro Detroit. Check them out, fanaticu.com.
Thanks, everybody, for downloading another episode on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Make sure this Saturday you download and check out our newest podcast release, The Justice Report. A dude that has been writing for Michigan for nearly 5 years, similar to Vito, has a Michigan credential, covers all things University of Michigan. And so Brandon Justice reached out to us and was like, I need to do a podcast for you guys. And it's going to be exclusively dedicated to Michigan athletics. Kid's got a lot of knowledge about the inner workings of Michigan. He loves to look at recruiting. And so Brandon, did what a lot of people do when they reach out to us, sent us a quick audio reel, did a really good job. I really enjoyed the takes that Brandon has. So check out our newest podcast every Saturday that will be released, and you can subscribe to it via iTunes. And if you need any information regarding anything going on here at the podcast network, just go to DetroitSportsPodcast.com. Now, cuz if I was to say to you that Buck Farmer was going to start a game versus a Minnesota Twins pitcher that had an ERA north of 8, would you turn into that game? Because potentially Wednesday's game could have runs galore, probably over under, maybe 10.
I'll be honest with you. After this disastrous-ass weekend, I don't want to tune into the Tigers at all. I'll seriously. We kind of discussed it in some pre-show. You were like, hey, did you check out the Tigers game last night? Because you wanted to play that clip for me of Rod Allen and what he said there and how it sounded like something else that starts with a D. Anyways, I was like, I flipped back and forth. I was in and out, and I was following most of the game through my phone because they had the World Cup of Hockey on, and I wanted to see if the U.S. was going to get ran out of basically Maple Leaf Center there in Toronto, and U.S. absolutely got destroyed, and the Tigers absolutely destroyed the Twins the other night. And I was like, yeah, that's great. I don't care anymore. I am at my wit's end with the Tigers. You sit there, you have your destiny in your own hands, or you can control a large part of your own destiny. You just got to take care of business against the Cleveland Indians, and you go out over the course of the weekend and you drop 2 of 3 to them. And then I was just hoping in that third game, I was just lose it. Please just lose the game. That way I can throw dirt on your grave and I can bury you. And I can go on about my life, and I don't have to worry about having to check in on the Tigers anymore. But they win one more. They keep me hooked. Now I got to stick around. I've got to watch stuff. Would I watch this Buck Farmer game that you're sitting there and you're proposing may take place? Yeah, I'm gonna have to. I've got to. It's like I told you with that disastrous Lions game. You can't do it for me. You got to be sacrificial here. You got to do it for the analysis. You're doing everything we do for the analysis. So yeah, I'm going to have to watch it. And you're right, it may be runs galore, and it probably will be runs galore. But it just, honestly, checking the temperature for the Tigers.
Cold?
Yeah. I'm not quite freezing yet, but I'm like right around 36 degrees. Like, a few more degrees, dude, I'm going to be ice cold because I just can't handle this anymore.
With another night's rest, I kind of came to realize that there is a small chance that if the Tigers get hot these last 2 weeks and, obviously
and everything points in the direction that they will get hot because they do this. They get really hot.
This week
really
could be a hot week.
Really hot. And then sometime in the playoffs, because I believe they're going to probably make it, they're probably going to get cold again, and it'll be a disaster.
If Jim Leland comes out and tells the Detroit sports nation that the Tigers are going to make the postseason, you have to have some weight, right? But no.
You would think.
No, I would say this, that the Tigers may back into the postseason, maybe back into the wild card game because of the fact that the competition that they're facing, the leaders above them are playing some tough teams. And you're facing a couple teams that, aren't the best, but they may back into it in that. You know what? Maybe one aging veteran, who was stubborn in V-Mart, wouldn't take himself out of the lineup. Hell, had to get plunked by an Indian in order for him to go out. And everyone was like, oh, how are the Tigers going to respond with no Kinsler, with no V-Mart? What'd they do? They go out there and they destroy Minnesota. Everybody had said, V-Mart is killing you. You take him out of the lineup. Why? Because, maybe the cosmos or the baseball god said, listen, if the Tigers aren't going to make quality decisions themselves, we're just going to take it upon ourselves to remove some guys that are older and maybe struggling down the stretch. V-Mart was killing the team, man. And Brad Ausmus refused to move him down in the lineup. He was forced to, and they scored some runs. And so you go, okay, do you plug in Farmer over Pelfrey? Probably. Do you plug him in over Sanchez? Yeah, of course. But it's a little bit concerning that we're relying on Buck Farmer in a game this late in the season. But, 2 out of 3 might get you the rest of the way there. The toughest part is you have 4 tough, excruciating games next week versus Cleveland. And those games, you would say you have to win 3 minimum. It's not likely to happen. I have them having a great week, maybe 4-2, 5-1 this week. But again, next week, probably regressing back to the mean with the 3-3 or 2-4 week. And then you see where it shakes out. But if you ask me today, they making the wild card game? I'm going to say no. I'm going to say that there's still too much going on with this team that's struggling when you have a starting rotation that's, in peril. Everyone's excited that Jordan Zimmerman pitched, 70 to 80 pitches with his other mates, in the rotation playing infield behind him. Whoop-de-doo. You got to go in there and you got to perform versus major league opponents. You're going to throw him in there versus KC. You're going to throw him in there versus Cleveland. Forget it. And then everyone assumes that, okay, following the series versus Cleveland, that they're just going to roll up in and play Atlanta and be like, sweet, we're going to sweep you. It doesn't work that way. You have to actually perform. And what you saw versus Cleveland was mental lapse, a team that was tight, and a team that you could tell the Tigers don't believe they're better than Cleveland. They don't think they belong on the field with them. A baseball team's not supposed to go, I believe, before the series started, like 11-1 before the series started. You're not supposed to have that happen. That's unbelievable that something like that would happen. I think we're sitting at 13-2. That's not supposed to happen in Major League Baseball. So there's a lot of things the Tigers, we have to hope happen for this team, and it all has to start happening rather quickly, and it starts with the performance with Buck Farmer. I just don't think so. I just think it's an up and down team, and they may have a chance to back in there because nobody might want to win it, but Tigers and their own volition and the talent that they have, it might be too much of an uphill climb in my opinion.
I think they win the wild card. As much as I just sat there and murdered this team and I want this season to be over because I'm tired of watching this team, I think they win the wild card, and this is why. All right, if you look at where they are placed in the wild card standings, all right, they're sat there and they're right behind Toronto and Baltimore. Now, Toronto and Baltimore, they're in the AL East. They got to play each other, I think, one more time this season. They're going to beat each other up. It goes Toronto, Baltimore, Detroit, Houston. Detroit has probably the easiest schedule out of those 4 top teams. I just see Detroit having enough left in the tank to where they sit there and they make a push. And they can do this. They can get in through the wild card. Toronto's got to play New York, who is full of young kids that are sitting there trying to make a name for themselves for next year. They're in the mix right now where they're coming off of a series with Seattle. Seattle's in the hunt still for a wild card spot. They're now going to go to Baltimore, play Baltimore, so they're going to beat each other up there, and then they've got to wrap up their season against probably the absolute best team in baseball, the Boston Red Sox. Now, conversely, Baltimore's in a series right now against Boston, and they're just getting shellacked left and right. They've got to go play Arizona. Then they go and they travel to Toronto, all right? So on the road at Toronto, and then they wrap their season up at New York when they take on the Yankees. Again, a bunch of young kids who are trying to prove themselves for next season. And then you look at the Houston Astros, all right? Houston taking on Oakland. They're going to travel to L.A. Then they got a series against Seattle. Again, Seattle's kind of in this mix. They're on the outside looking in, but they're in this mix. And then they go back to L.A. and play the Angels again. So it really and truly, the way I'm looking at this right now, there are 2 teams who are on the outside who could possibly get in and make a nice push down the stretch here, and that's the Houston Astros and the Detroit Tigers. Detroit, you said it yourself, they got to play Cleveland. They haven't been able to take on Cleveland and do anything against them. They look totally outmatched. If they can sit there and they can split 2 games against Cleveland, if they can get 2 wins against Cleveland, I think it cements them in for the wild card. Again, big if. They're wrapping up this series against Minnesota. They've got to go play Kansas City. And Kansas City's going to be a little bit of a tough game for them. It's going to be a tough series. And then they sat there and they wrap up their season in Atlanta. And Atlanta's garbage. Not very good. But you're going to get healthy against the Twins here. Maybe get on a little streak when you come back home, play Kansas City. You got 4 games at home against Cleveland. If you can take 2 of those 4 against Cleveland, I think you're right there. I think you're in the mix. And honestly, I want it to be over because I'm tired of talking about them. I'm tired of having to put them on our rundown sheet and discuss them because they've given us absolutely nothing all season. It's been up and down, up and down, up and down. Honestly, I feel like I'm on a roller coaster here. It's insane. As close to being a fly on a porn star's butt that is just gyrating on top of another porn star right now. Just up and down, up and down. That's what it's been. You've had 1 foot in, 1 foot out, 1 foot in, 1 foot out the entire season because this team has been so bipolar.
So one last point before we end the podcast. Do you think that the Tigers handled the whole Trevor Bauer situation appropriately with Daniel Norris retaliating and throwing just behind Rajai Davis? A lot of people said the unwritten rule is you're supposed to plunk Cleveland Indian. Trevor Bauer had hit Miguel Cabrera. He took Ian Kinsler's head off. He basically, made Victor Martinez's knees swollen, and he's out of the lineup. He hit 3 MVP caliber players for the Tigers, and all you do is throw behind Rajai Davis. I know at the time, it got out of hand in the 9th inning. Should maybe K-Rod have plunked an Indian, or are we going to look for the fireworks in the next series? Do you think that? I like the unwritten rule that, hey, if you're going to hit one guy, okay, you can maybe let it slide, but then you go on, you hit 2, and then 3. You had a lack of control. It wasn't intentional. We can establish that, but a Cleveland Indian should have been drilled. Should have been drilled right in the ass.
You got to realize what they're playing for.
It was 9-5.
Their playoff lives are on the line here. You're right. And I get that. I get that. But their playoff lives are on the line, and you don't need Major League Baseball getting involved in suspending guys. Expect the very first series of next season for fireworks. Expect dudes to get drilled left and right. It's one of those things, you sit there, you just kind of let it go, but you never forget it, and you just kind of take care of business next season. That's what's going to happen.
Okay. Very good podcast, sir. Anything going on for you the rest of this weekend or week?
You know what? I did want to give you some games to watch here for college football. So if you give me 1 sec, I'll pull those up for you real quick. I think we should maybe make that a part of our college football talk every week here. Where I'll just sit there and I'll highlight a couple games, because that Louisville game was, if you're not a Florida State fan, that Louisville game was great. Their quarterback, like I said, he's amazing. The dude is ultra talented, runs that offense to a T. All right, well, let's just kind of get into some college football here for this weekend here. And I do have some things going on, and I'll tell you about them after I give you the rundown for the college football games. Yep. At noon, you've got Georgia. Kirby Smart's their new head coach, taking on Ole Miss. If you remember last year, Ole Miss gave Alabama their only loss, and Kirby Smart was Alabama's defensive coordinator. So look for Kirby Smart to get some revenge. On top of that, Ole Miss has a potent offense that can score. Georgia doesn't seem to put up points, but they play very well defensively, very tough. Of course, you got Whiskey versus Michigan State. I think Michigan State's going to win that game. What else do we got here? You got Florida versus Tennessee. Back when I was a kid, I used to love watching the Florida versus Tennessee games, as well as the Florida versus Florida State games. So that should be an interesting matchup. If you're a Michigan fan, of course, Penn State, you kind of kick off your Big Ten season there with that game. Otherwise, I think that kind of wraps it all up. Yeah, I mean, you've got Arkansas versus Texas A&M as well. It's a 9 p.m. Saturday night game, so that'll be your evening game. That's taking place at AT&T Stadium. That's the house that Jerry built. So that should be a solid matchup as well. So check some of those games out. A lot of SEC stuff on the docket there. But this week, I've been doing all that training and all that running, and this is the Sunday where I sit there and I go and I do my half marathon, dealing with a little bit of a tweaked hamstring, and those don't get better unless you absolutely do nothing. So we're going to have to wrap that up. I did buy some compression pants, which I totally understand now why women wear yoga pants. They are the most comfortable pants I have. I sat there, I walked around the house after my little run yesterday, just wearing those. So comfortable. So comfortable. Incredible. So I get why chicks wear yoga pants now. I totally get it, man. These things are unbelievable. Everything's got some support. It's great.
Yes, sir. Good luck. Is there a certain time goal you're trying to meet?
What I'd like to do, I'd like to be able to, if I run the whole thing at 12 minutes a mile, I'll be okay with that. That's not where I want to finish. If I do that, I'll finish the run in roughly 2 hours, 26, 27 minutes-ish. What I'd really like to do is to come in somewhere between a 10-minute to an 11-minute, 30-second mile pace for the 13.1 miles. So we'll see what happens. We'll see how it works out. It's really weird because I've never done this before. I'm not built like a runner. I'm very top-heavy, so it puts a lot of strain on my knees and on my ankles. So we'll see what happens. I did have a very good pace for my 10-mile run when I was doing my training. It was great. I ran the whole thing straight, no problems, and it was good. Conversely, I ran 14 and a half miles, and that was a complete disaster. I came in at like a 12:30 pace, and it hurt. I was sore. It's where I kind of sat there and busted up that hamstring, and my feet and my ankles were killing me. So that's why we got those compression pants. And I look good in them. I look real good in them.
Best of luck. Stay injury-free. Complete it. And good for you, man. Half marathon. And who's sponsoring it? Who's running it?
It is the Brooksy Way. So I guess L. Brooks Patterson put this thing together for his son years ago. It'll be held over there out by Oakland University. I'm doing it with my stepdad's cousin. So I believe that works out. What's up, Mike? Mike listens to our show every week. He's a good guy. So I'm doing it with him. He's basically been my coach, Mike James, hooking it up, holding me down. That guy, he refers to himself as the Rocket. He is a running machine.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. Like that guy, he's lean, mean. I think he's, 40s, 50s. Great shape. Phenomenal. If I could look half as good as that guy looks when I'm his age, I'll be winning for sure. But that guy runs like he's shooting for like a 5-minute mile. You know how fast you got to do a 5-minute mile, and you know how quick you got to run?
No kidding.
Jesus.
Good luck,
There's
bro.
no way I could do that.
All right, good luck, bro, in your yoga pants. We'll look for
Yes.
pictures. Yes, sir. Let's get out of here.
I'm going to send you a picture of me in my yoga pants.
For the Jock, Adam Strozinski, I'm the Doc, John McAroon. Thanks for supporting the network. We'll see everybody next Thursday. Bye-bye.
Go Lions. Go Tigers. Go me in my yoga pants. You too, Mike.
Second deck.
Sorry, Detroit. Didn't quite work out.
And all I can say is Detroit Sports Podcast scores.
I hear voices in my head. They counsel me. They understand. They talk to me. They talk to me. They tell me things that I will do. They show me things I'll do. They talk to me.